today we have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Melnia Roberts, author, naturopathic doctor, and one of the top biological medicine practitioners in North America. She specializes in treating digestive issues, chronic conditions, and cancer. But that's not all. She's also a huge proponent of healing the gut, balancing hormones, detoxifying the body, and building healthy children. Topics we all care deeply about here at The Brain Possible. We have a lot to learn from Dr. Roberts. Let's get started. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so first, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to this work? What made you so passionate about the naturopathic route?
Yeah, so I had a few different influences. One was a personal experience. So when I was a kid, I had really bad allergies and eczema. And when I was about 13, a family friend said to my parents, you should try taking her to see a naturopathic doctor. And they brought me to see a naturopathic doctor. And within a few months, all of my allergies cleared up. So I thought it was like magic because I didn't really understand how it all worked. Mm-hmm. But that was like my first realization that the body had the ability to be able to heal itself. And that was a major influence as to why I want to become a doctor, because I want to be help other people like myself so they didn't need to suffer unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. So that was my first sort of influence into naturopathic world. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in my second year in school, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So that led me in the road of trying to do a bunch of research and figure out what was going on and try to really come up with different ways to help treat my dad. Unfortunately, he passed away 9 short months later, but that really led me on my path to really focused on chronic disease and cancer and trying to figure out root causes and doing what I do today, which is a real focus on chronic disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about your father. I hear pancreatic cancer is a beast.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the tougher cancers to deal with. And, I feel like back then I was just a second year student. I really didn't know anything at that point in time. And, I was just in my early 20s and I was just trying to help my dad. Right. So.
Yeah. And how old were you when your parents first took you to the naturopathic doctor?
I was 13. So that's when I was, introduced to naturopathic medicine. And so that was,
Were your parents really into the alternative complementary kind of medical space? Was that something or is new to them as well?
Yeah, I think they were open-minded to it. We definitely weren't a family that rushed to doctors all the time. And so they were always trying to figure it out on their own or figure it out like in that naturopathic space. So they were definitely open-minded to an alternative way of thinking. And even when I remember going to my dad saying, I'm trying to decide between going to conventional medical school or naturopathic college, they definitely kind of pushed me towards doing naturopathic medicine, saying, telling me, this is the medicine of the future. This is what you need to be doing. So.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you specialize in biological medicine. What is that exactly?
So biological medicine is a type of medicine that really originated in Europe. And it does, cover it is, in line with naturopathic medicine in that it's the belief that the body has the ability to be able to heal itself. So in that innate wisdom within it. But it goes a little bit deeper in that there's a few other things that you're looking at. Other things that you're looking at is something called terrain. So terrain medicine is about that it's about in order for your cells to be healthy, they need a healthy environment to live in. So it's about cleaning up the space inside the cells and around the cells in order for us to have healthy cells, and in that case, healthy tissues and healthy organs. And so, so a big part is cleaning up terrain. And then the other aspect of it is something called regulation. So every tissue, organ, system of the body needs to be able to regulate itself. If it can regulate itself, then those systems can self-heal. So the regulation, the analogy I like to use is that like if you're in a hot environment, then you will sweat. That's your body's way of regulating. And then if you're in a cold environment, then your body will shiver, and and your body's regulating itself in response to that stressor in its environment. And so that's what every system of your body is constantly doing. It's constantly regulating, and that's what helps to keep it healthy.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in biological medicine is we are figuring out what are the stressors that are interfering and not allowing the body to be able to regulate. So removing those stressors and then allowing the body to regulate the way it's designed to. So those are sort of like some other key concepts of biological medicine that makes it a little bit different than naturopathic medicine or functional medicine or some of the other integrative therapies out there. But they all like intertwine, right? Because it's truth.
Yes. So I have definitely done a little research, but I'm not, I don't feel like I 100% could describe it, but I don't really fully get, like, maybe this isn't one of my questions, but can you speak to the difference between naturopathic medicine versus integrative medicine, the terms integrative medicine and then functional medicine?
Yeah. So when I think of naturopathic medicine is really like an umbrella term for all natural therapies.
Okay.
So it can encompass really everything, including functional medicine and biological medicine and traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, right? Okay. So all of that could be considered naturopathic medicine, because that's just we're working on the innate healing of the body. Okay,
that makes sense to me. But I kind of also thought that was maybe how I might have sort of, not that beautifully, but might have described integrative medicine. It's all integrating.
Well, when I think of integrative medicine, I think of it more as you're thinking of it as like a supportive therapy to what would be like allopathic medicine or conventional medicine, and how they can intertwine with each other. Okay. So how can we, if you're on this medication, how can we support your pathways of detoxification while you're on that to make sure that your body can regulate itself? So you're thinking about how do they intersect with each other? Okay. So that's what I think of more as integrative medicine. And then functional medicine, I think that in terms of functional medicine, it still follows a bit more of it's a medicine that is more designed for medical doctors who are kind of shifting into naturopathic medicine. And one of the things is that they do a lot of testing, and it's not that there's any problems with a lot of testing, but they need to actually see like the physical proof that something is physically there, or that there's a physical imbalance before they will do a treatment. So it's sometimes with that they can kind of miss a few pieces of the puzzle because they're so focused on needing to have a test that shows that is actually there. So it's
that makes sense to me. And like I've worked with naturopathic doctors and functional doctors, an MD that has a functional
Yeah.
degree as well. And then a functional coach too. So I've done all that. And I will say all of them did testing, even the naturopathic doctor.
Yeah. And I do different types of testing. So that's where, like, I'm looking at the terrain though, right? So whereas they'd be like, oh, but you're not.
You're looking for different things.
Yeah. I'm looking at different things.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? I bet a lot of them, just like anyone or any doctor or practitioner, it really just depends on them. Because my functional medicine health coach right now is, maybe my MD wasn't like this, but the coach that I'm using right now, she really has me do gratitude every day.
Oh, nice.
She wants
Okay.
me to get up and with the first light of day, she wants me to go take a walk and
good.
You know, all that stuff.
Yeah. Which is excellent. Right. So I think that, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. Right. Yeah. I'm just saying that, your lines of thinking are sometimes a little bit different, but again, they all can very much intersect with each other.
Yeah, they do. That's why I think I get confused. So thank you for explaining that
well,
to me.
trying to explain. Yeah.
No, I think it was good. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So your website says that at your practice, Advanced Naturopathic Medical Center, you utilize a lot of testing to help your patients.
Yeah.
Specifically, you have advanced testing techniques to isolate and identify sources of dysregulation.
Yeah.
What are some of those tests that you like to use, and what do they tell you about a patient?
Yeah, so we use a number of different tests, and a lot of our tests are actually in-house tests that we run within the clinic. So we don't. Some of them we do send if we need it. We'll send to external labs, but I'll go through 3 of them that we use quite extensively in our clinic. And one of them is called Thermography. So it's a full body scan of the body using temperature. And we check the head, the neck, the breasts, the abdomen, which will include all your vital organs, and back, which will include kidneys. And we go over 119 points on the body with a really sensitive temperature gauge. And then we give the body a stress, which is simply all of those points being exposed to a certain temperature for 10 minutes. So really people are just standing disrobed in a room for those 10 minutes. So sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable in that sense, but it's non-invasive, no exposure to radiation. And then we recheck all of those points. And what should happen is that all of those points should be able to regulate themselves. If those tissues can regulate themselves, then those tissues can heal themselves. So then we get an idea, okay, which systems of the body are able to properly regulate and heal, and which tissues of the body there's blockages and we need to be working on those systems and getting those systems to work better. So that gives me a lot of information. Wow. I find that typically just because people have pathology in certain areas of the body doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the dysfunction is. So that's where we really decipher between pathology and dysfunction.
Okay.
And in like conventional medicine, they really get focused just on pathology, but we want to know, okay, but where's the dysfunction in the body that allowed that pathology to be able to happen?
I ask that question every day. The way my mind works, I'm like, I don't believe that anything just happens and you just put a patch on it and you can't question it. That's just, I could never do that.
I know. And that's how my brain works too. Yeah.
There is a reason that this happened, or 1,000 reasons, but what are those
exactly.
reasons?
Exactly. And so that's what you want to kind of dissect. Usually it's multi-causal. It's not just one thing that's going on. The other thing that we're doing is something called dark field microscopy. So it's a prick of the fingertip. We look at those live blood cells underneath the microscope, and it gives me an idea of what's going on with the body's internal terrain. So whether cells are all clumped together or if they're nicely spaced out, we get an idea of how well you're absorbing the nutrients from the food you're eating. Also get to look at your white blood cells, so we get an idea of what's going on with your immune system. Wow. So we get lots more information about what's going on internally. And, this can make a big difference in terms of like if cells are all clumped together, then cells can't get proper nutrients into those cells. We can't get proper oxygen into those cells. And that can lead to numerous different dysfunctions within the body. So this gives me a real good idea of what does your terrain actually look like.
Yeah.
And then the other test we run is something called heart rate variability. So it's a testing that is assessing your autonomic nervous system. So it's a nervous system that runs in the background. We don't consciously control it. So there's two parts to that nervous system. There's your stress state and your rest, digest, and repair. So we're going to see how stressed is your body, how well can your body repair itself, and how are they in relationship to each other. Because one of the challenges is that if your body's too high in a stress state, then your body can't properly heal. So these can be some of those challenges to, why isn't the body able to, we're doing all these things and we're doing all the right things, but why isn't the body able to heal? And it might be just because it's stuck in this sympathetic state, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to work on shifting it into parasympathetic. So these can be, some of the things that are going on, but those three tests give me so much information about what's going on with the patient and where we need to go from there. And that actually helps me to give a patient a really individualized plan because, no one's tests are the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I have not had any of those tests. I've
had
testing and none of those ones. I don't think so. I mean, maybe someone's looked at my blood like that, but not the temperature.
You'll just have to come up to Canada.
I know. I'm like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like, otherwise you're missing all these things.
Yes, exactly. Helps us to go just a little bit deeper than what you do with other practitioners.
Right. Okay. So you developed, oh wait, sorry. No, I completed that. I'm sorry. You developed I don't want to say this wrong. You developed the neurovisceral.
Oh yeah. Yes. Neurovisceral regulation therapy. Yeah. And so, and it just really goes hand in hand with all the other stuff I was talking about. But, the major concept of our bodies in terms of proper healing is to be able to regulate itself. Right. And so what the neurovisceral regulation therapy does is that I do some testing to see what those stressors are on the body. So those stressors can be food sensitivities, immune challenges, heavy metals, environmental toxins, everything physical and everything emotional. Mm-hmm. So those are the stressors on the body. So we're identifying all of those stressors that are weakening the body, and we're checking this through the nervous system. And then we are figuring out which organs those stressors are weakening. And then we are reprogramming the nervous system to no longer be weakened by those substances, and then rechecking and making sure that the system is now stronger. And usually I will use supplements to help support that whole process too, of what's showing up.
For like a time period till things are regulated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And typically, I typically see my patients once a month. So I will have them I will put them on a plan for a month's time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know that you focus a lot on digestive health and the gut. For our listeners who aren't familiar with the condition, can you the connection. I'm sorry, for our listeners who we've talked about this before, but I feel like I want to hear your perspective. And also if anyone they might not be familiar with the connection between the gut and the brain.
Yeah.
Can you explain how our gut health affects our brain health?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's such a huge topic. There's a big gut brain connection that is, I think it's really so important for all of us to realize that the better able that we're able to heal the gut, that we'll be supporting the brain function. So first of all, there's lots of different attachments in terms of what goes on in the brain and what happens in the gut. One of the major ones that connects those two together is the microbiome. Mm-hmm. So that's that like ecosystem of bacteria and fungus that live within our gut. And in order for us to have good gut health, that microbiome needs to have really a lot of diversity in the healthy bacteria that are in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And we also need to have, it really needs to be, we call it like it's basically the symbiotic balance. So you need to have a balance of the healthy bacteria and the unhealthy bacteria, right? In that sense, that's this kind of the simplified version of doing it. But when we say unhealthy, really those part of those bacteria are just opportunistic bacteria. So if we get a die off of the healthy ones, then those unhealthy ones will start to take up those spaces. Mm-hmm. But what we're finding out in terms of the gut-brain connection is that it's not just gut-brain, that they're now figuring out that it's like gut-brain microbiome axis. Okay. And that the microbiome plays such a huge role in terms of that brain function. Mm-hmm. And it was originally thought that it was really a top-down connection. So it was the nervous system that controlled everything that happened in the gut. But with the microbiome, what they're actually figuring out is that the microbiome can also have a bottom-up connection. So what's going on in the microbiome can actually control what's going on in terms of the brain. I know such a huge topic, and I think that one of the other huge connections that was a big aha moment for me was realizing that one of the other big connections is this. So we have our gut, and I always talk so much about the gut and that the microbiome is a big barrier and it needs to be in balance. And then you have the lining of your digestive tract, which you need the good integrity of that lining of the digestive tract to be strong in order for our systems to be healthy. And between the cells that line the digestive tract is this thing called tight junctions. And those tight junctions can over time get damaged. And so then you end up with foods that aren't completely digested end up in the bloodstream. So then you end up with a whole bunch of toxic load ending up in the bloodstream because of that breakdown of the microbiome, because of the breakdown of the lining of the digestive tract. But then once it's in the bloodstream, what can happen is that you have this blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is also those cells that line the blood-brain barrier also held together by these things called tight junctions. Okay. So similar to how the lining of our gut has that same one cell deep lining and held together by those tight junctions. And the same toxic loads that can damage the tight junctions in the gut can also damage the tight junctions of the blood-brain barrier. So once those toxins make their way into the blood, they can now also damage the tight junctions of the blood-brain barrier. And so then those toxins can now seep into the nervous system through those tight junctions, right? So that seeing that whole connection to me was showing like, okay, like this is how important our gut is, because if we're not taking care of our gut, then we can end up with not just leaky gut, but we can end up with a leaky brain.
And what does that look like?
So I think that can lead to a number of things. It can be things from like people experiencing brain fog to you could see things like mood changes from anxiety to depression. And then you can also see like neurological degenerative diseases like dementia, right? So you can really see the whole gamut of things when you have a breakdown of the nervous system. And a lot of that can stem from what happens in the gut. Mm-hmm.
So for children, do you work with many children?
I do work with a lot of children, yes. Probably not as many as I definitely see a higher percentage of adults in my practice, but I definitely have a fair number of kids in my practice, as well as being a mom.
Yeah. So for children, how do you know that they've got like an issue with their gut? and what symptoms or what might you be seeing in your testing that is showing you something is off, and how do you support them? I guess that's a lot of questions at once.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So with kids, well, even with adults, one of the big questions is finding out about bowel movements, because bowel movements will tell me a lot about what's going on. And we can know that, from babies to adults, right? We should be moving our bowels at least once a day. With babies, they should be moving it with every feeding. Right. So, so those are good indications for us to know if.
I have a question about those. Let's pause there for a second.
Yeah.
So can you explain what the Bristol stool chart is?
For sure. Yeah. So basically, I think what's really important with that chart is for people to understand what an ideal bowel movement is. Right. Because I think that there's so many people who are like, oh yeah, I have bowel movements, and
you go or you don't.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not actually, and I'll be like, but what do their stools look like? And so many people are so embarrassed to talk about their stools, but this gives me so much information about what's going on. So yeah, the ideal bowel movement should be a formed stool. It should be an even consistency. It should be like a 1 to 2 inch in girth. It should be quite long. It should be like a medium brown. It should have a mild odor to it. So it should have some curvature to it as well. So that would be like an ideal, right? And then trying to remember, I think that we go, well, one side of the chart gets like harder into, they get into harder pellets. Right. They're drier part of the stools. And we'll see it in terms of and then you're kind of tending more towards a constipation picture. Okay. And then there's the other part of the numbers, which, have too much fluid in those stools. So it's leading towards, it gets more liquidy, gets loose, where they just fall apart. And then where it ends up just being like a diarrhea, which is just like a watery stool. Mm-hmm. So knowing what we want to aim for in terms of ideal, and that's for adults as opposed to, as opposed to our kid, like it depends on what you're talking about and what age range you're talking about in terms of kids. Because when you're talking about kids who are breastfeeding, that's different than kids who are than a toddler who's on solid foods.
Okay, so as soon as they start solid foods.
Yeah, exactly. Then, yeah, but even if it's a mixture, sometimes if they have a mixture of their breastfeeding sometimes and they're having some solid foods, they might not still have those formed stools. They might still have, so.
Okay, so what does that tell you by looking at your, so they're constipated, or no, they've got loose stools. What does that tell you as far as their gut and their health of their gut?
Yeah. So the bowel movements will tell us about that composition of their gut flora. So if they're having good stools, which are looking like those really like ideal stools, then that gut flora is likely more in balance. That we talked about that. So then if we're getting, harder stools, then it may be that it may be things like we need to work on liver and gallbladder issues, which would be helping with when we have a better amount of bile flow, then we can actually get better stools. And then sometimes if you're working on like looser stools, sometimes that can work with like fluids in the body. So we're working on also kidney function or lymphatic drainage. So there's just kind of different indications of which organ systems we also need to be working on supporting in order to get those bowel movements in better order.
Okay. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes sense now. All right. So I just derailed where you were going here.
And I'm not too sure where I was going either. I think you're asking me about, symptoms that they might have, right?
Yeah. So the symptoms, and then now that you've provided all that context on the gut brain,
bowels,
microbiome and the bowels and all that, what can we do after you tell me the symptoms? What can we do gut wise to optimize? Well, I'm very interested in our children's health.
Yes, for sure. Well, to me, diet is like so important in terms of our kids' health and their gut health and balancing out that microbiome, and that we have to get that diet in check in order to get the whole gut into better health. Because I think that in general, I'm sure this is not the case with you, but in general, a lot of parents are feeding their kids foods that really aren't providing huge amounts of health for their body.
Well, I know you're not here in the States, but the SAD diet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we say that too, right? It's that standard American diet, right? And we see it here too. It's just, people are feeding their kids processed, packaged, chemically laden foods, right? That are filled with toxic loads. And we really need to be cleaning up the diet and feeding our kids real foods. It's going to make a big difference in terms of their gut health and how we build up that microbiome, and really even that brain health in the end.
Yeah. I know. And then for so many people, it's just everywhere, and they've grown up on it, and the processed food and the fast food, and it doesn't have to mean fast food like McDonald's, but quick, easy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, what do you share with your patients about how to get started with their kids when, that's not how they're used to eating?
Yeah. So I think that, what I start with is removing what I call major inflammatory foods. So we remove, with most of my patients, I'm suggesting removing gluten, cow's dairy, and sugar. That's my starting point with basically all of my patients.
I have a question there about the cow's dairy. So some of my children eat dairy, but actually I don't buy milk. Because I've never bought it because I don't drink it. But I wish that I could have it because, because it is actually can be so healthy as if it's not processed, right?
Yeah. So, the challenge with most of our dairy is that there's a protein in it called casein A1, which is quite inflammatory. And that's a question I've been getting a lot lately, is that now in a lot of the health food stores, they're starting to make it available that you can get a casein A2. Dairy, and that dairy has actually been shown to not be inflammatory.
Okay, so A2 is good.
A2 is good, yes. Okay. So if you have access to that, and you can find that, and ideally in an organic form, so that there's no chemicals added to it and no hormones added to it, then that would be an okay source. I haven't tried it yet because I think it heads off the shelves really quickly here. So we don't have a lot of supply, but I think that as it becomes more available, that would be an option for people who love their dairy and want to be consuming it. Because that's the inflammatory part of it. That's the challenging part of it.
The casein. No,
the casein. Yeah, the casein A1. Yeah.
Casein A1. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I say casein, I've said that term or that word for years. I actually been pronouncing it wrong probably, but does that go hand in hand with A1? So casein is A1?
Yeah. Okay, so that's likely the one that you've been talking about. And I used to say that all the time too. I'd be like, the protein, that's the inflammatory part, is the casein. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that I just wanted to pause there on the dairy for a second, because I know that dairy can be actually very healthy. And, I cook out of Weston 8 Price, Sally Fallon's cookbooks and stuff. And even GAPS. I don't do the GAPS diet, but I cook out of those cookbooks. And I wish I could have it all. But so I guess the idea is that maybe our food as it is today that we can find in the stores just isn't what nature,
what it used to be.
What it used to be,
exactly.
What nature intended it to be. So it's just better to avoid those if you're worried about inflammation or you've got some kind of thing going on.
Yeah. And I think that, that all of us should be kind of worried about inflammation, because that's the biggest part of what's causing problems in our body, right?
Inflammation is the root of disease, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we should all be thinking about how to clean up the diet. I know definitely there's people who tolerate dairy better. I've been asked questions about, the raw organic. And that, and definitely if you can find a farmer and you can get sources of raw organic, it's going to be better than the conventional dairy that you'd get from the grocery store, which is from hundreds of different cows in that 1 liter of milk. You don't know how many, right? So it's definitely a lot different. And if you know what the cow is eating, that can make a big difference too. Most of the cows are eating GMO grains. So they're eating soy and corn as grains, as opposed to eating grass. And that'll definitely change the composition of the milk too. So, and we say that even in terms of the meat, right? In terms of, our grass-fed meats and, the composition of the meats are going to be completely different than in industrial fed meats. So, and that'll go hand in hand with the milk that they're producing.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I think is all in line with Weston Price.
Yeah. The other thing I can't have are eggs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Do you have that? Is that a common one that you see?
It is definitely a common one. I try to eventually heal up people's gut and treat them for egg sensitivities, because I think that if you can get organic eggs that are from cows that have been fed properly, from chickens that have been fed properly,
bugs and stuff.
then you can actually, that eggs can be highly nutritious. Yeah. So, but I know that they tend to be a high allergenic food. And what tends to be the more the part that's the allergenic food is the egg whites. So it's just, sometimes you got to start with some egg yolks, see how your body does, and then add in the egg whites later when we've treated you for it. Yeah.
Why is it that eggs have become, I think people are becoming more allergic to, or at least maybe they always were, do you think? Or is that allergy becoming more common, eggs?
Well, there's also, a more challenging protein in the egg whites. And testing my knowledge, I think it's the albumin in the egg whites, which is a protein that is just more inflammatory. So we just tend to see that. I think that we're also working with a lot of people who have guts that aren't in good shape. And when those guts aren't in good shape, then you tend to have more sensitivities. Okay. So I'd say that most people have like a leaky gut picture that I talked about, that hyperpermeability of the gut. Most people's microbiome is not in balance. Mm-hmm. So those things would help to lead you to having higher amounts of food sensitivities. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because even when I treat people with food sensitivities, I say, like, what we have to first do is we have to remove all of those inflammatory foods before I run any sort of testing, right? Because a lot of people will say, oh, I think I have food sensitivities. Can I run, I'd like to get a food sensitivity test done. And I said, well, let's clean up the diet first before we do the food sensitivity testing. Because I find that if you do that food sensitivity testing and the gut is all inflamed and the microbiome's off and we have like a lot of holes in that digestive tract,
Mm-hmm.
that test has a huge list of foods that people have to avoid. And then when you try to tell them to eat this diet where they can only eat like a couple foods, then they just find that way too restrictive. So I rather start them with an anti-inflammatory diet, and then if they're still experiencing symptoms after we've done all of that work, then we run a food sensitivity testing. And I find that to be more accurate.
Oh, that makes sense. I like that. So,
Yeah.
okay. So you would recommend, you like to recommend removing inflammatory foods first.
Yes. Yeah,
And
for sure.
then what else for someone who's new to, trying to get their kids and family, eating real food and
Yeah. So
their terrain.
yeah. So I think that in terms of what I recommend eating would be to have lots of vegetables. So you want to incorporate vegetables. You want to make vegetables normal in the family to be eating. I think that what's really important when we're talking about kids is that as parents that we are modeling it for our kids. So we also need to be eating healthy. It's not that it's not that you just feed them this food and then you eat, you go off and eat
Whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. the pasta and donuts, right? Like you have to be modeling healthy eating as well. So and typically the diet is, vegetables, healthy fats like avocados, and then I'm okay with eating meats. So it's usually cleaner meats like a grass-fed beef, or you're having some organic chicken, organic lamb, grass-fed lambs. So those are the kind of meats we're having in our household. Mm-hmm. And then, you're cleaning that up. And then with a lot of kids, what I'm also putting them on is something called a probiotic. So those are the healthy bacteria. So we're just reestablishing that good bacterial terrain. I think that you have to be introducing those probiotics just because they get removed so easily. So we need to be putting. How are so
antibiotics? What else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So our vegetables have been sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and that kills off that healthy bacteria when we consume them.
I mean, I knew pesticides were bad, but I didn't realize it's killing the bacteria in our gut.
Yeah. And then our animals have been injected with antibiotics. So when we consume those antibiotics, then it kills off a portion of our healthy bacteria. The big one right now is that the antiseptic, the hand sanitizers that we're taking in, right?
Okay.
So
yeah, I actually was just thinking about
those
that.
hand sanitizers are killing off a big portion of our microbiome too. So
okay. Yeah. So let's pause there. So I was literally just thinking, I wonder what her take on everything with COVID is, and like what you tell your patients they should be doing right now in this last year for taking care of themselves, keeping themselves healthy, avoiding this scary virus that everyone is worried about, and also what you tell them when they get COVID, because I'm sure you've had some patients who've had it.
So I think
a lot of
questions all at once. No, it's perfect. But because I think I've basically covered a lot of that, because what's important to know is that about 80% of your immune system is housed in your gut. Okay. And the better we can take care of our gut health, the better we can improve our immune system. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I'm promoting for my patients is let's work on our own immune systems. Yeah. And so that when we come across this virus, that our bodies can handle this infection, mm-hmm. and that it handles it without having much of a problem. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with a virus that has a 99% recovery rate. So most of us can handle this, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's a small percentage who are a bit more vulnerable, but you'd also be vulnerable to a flu infection too, right? Or anything else you came across. So so yeah, but our focus needs to be on boosting that immune system, and diet's going to play a huge part. I typically am also getting my patients on to there's a big association between low vitamin D levels and people having poor outcomes when they have COVID-19. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your vitamin D levels are sufficient. And what's important to also know, because there's a lot of people who are taking vitamin D, but vitamin D should always be paired with K2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the reason for that is that D helps us to properly absorb minerals like calcium from our diet. And then K makes sure that those minerals go to the right places. So it makes sure that that calcium goes to our bones as opposed to our arteries. Oh. So it's very important that these are paired together. So that's a good message to be getting out to the public as people start to ramp up their D, that D needs to be paired with K2.
Okay, that the reason for it to go into your bones makes sense, but why would it go to your arteries?
So that's where you get calcification. Yeah, you start to see higher calcification of hardening of the artery. Okay. Yes, heart disease. Yeah, is because exactly. So you want to make sure that it's going to the right places.
Got it.
So yeah, we're getting them on different vitamins. If you can get natural vitamin D, that's even better. So getting outside, getting some sun, getting some movement, getting some fresh air.
And then in our food, do we get it in our food, or does your body? I don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Well, I'd say the best, there are some sources from food sources, but I would say the best way for us to get natural vitamin D is from the sun. Okay. Sunlight. Yeah. Okay. So getting outside. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't just stay inside in front of your electronics all day.
No,
I think still go outside more than ever is important right now.
Yeah, I think that's terrible advice for being told that people need to be staying inside, and that, closing gyms down and people aren't being active or as active as they once were. I think that, we're actually decreasing people's immune systems by the advice that has been given from our authorities.
Yeah. So by the advice, but also there's like a huge chunk of like a conversation that is missing that frustrates a lot of people right now, because they're trying to push a lot of safety stuff, but they're not talking about boosting your immune system in any way whatsoever at all. I've heard.
Yeah, I feel like it's a frustrating time because even with my association, we are sent emails saying that, all the stuff we can't talk about. And some of the stuff we can't talk about is the immune system. And I'm like, I've been talking about the immune system ever since I've been practicing, right? Like, this isn't new. Yeah. I'm not just starting to talk about it. I've always been talking about it. And that, so we just can't use the word boost, but we can use support.
Yeah. I guess
support the immune system.
Whatever. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I know. So
Okay. So hold on. You mentioned sanitizers being frustrating for you. Now I understand sanitizers can be really helpful, but what has happened? I've thought about this too, but I want to touch on it for our listeners. What's the issue with overusing them?
Yeah. The challenge is that it's damaging our microbiome. And so, and I know the question I'll often get asked is, but I'm just putting it on my hands, like your microbiome's in your gut. And So first of all, it's understanding that we actually have a microbiome all over our body. We have a microbiome on our skin. We have a microbiome through all of our mucous membranes, through all of our organ systems. So our microbiome is pretty extensive. And so we are damaging that microbiome that is on our skin. Mm-hmm. Also, anything that you put on your skin gets absorbed into your tissues below, which is into your bloodstream. So it can be, systemically damaging us. Mm-hmm. And then, like you'll see it, like it's like they promote it in school. They tell kids to put their hand sanitizer on before they eat their lunch. Then the kids have hand sanitizer on their hands, and then they're eating their lunches. So that hand sanitizer is getting onto their food, into their stomachs, right? So it's, I think that, unfortunately, what we're going to see is a lot of damage happening to that microbiome by what we're doing right now. And I'm saddened by that. I'm saddened by what we're doing to our kids right now.
So you would rather, for instance, at school, tell the kids, wash your hands.
Go wash your hands with soap and water.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Right. And I think that's the best way for us to be cleaning our hands. Like, let's just do that on a regular basis. But I know, like, even my daughter's school, like, that's not something that they're able to do. They're not able to just go to the washroom and just wash their hands. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I think a lot of schools are doing well. I don't know. My kids' school, I think they're doing the best that they can, and I don't love everything that they do, but I am happy that the kids are at least in school, because man, they need that too.
Yeah. And I think social interaction is really important. I think that, we are social beings, and we, and that's, school is for learning, but it's also for a socialization. And so I think that that's an important aspect of schooling. I'd say my frustrating part with schooling is, with my daughter's school, is them having to wear masks all day is not an ideal situation. I don't know what it's like for where you guys live.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
And they also have, like my kids, I have 4 kids. I know my kindergartners have like a table with 4 kids, and then they have this like plexiglass between them as well. Yeah. And I'm okay with it, because I'm at least really thankful they're in school. And I understand that that's what the school had to do to make people comfortable enough to be there.
Yeah.
But so.
Yeah. I know and I think it's tough, right? Because I think that what we're doing is we have kids living in fear, right? And parents living in fear, and fear is also going to decrease our immune systems. So we have to get out of that fear mode too, and trust our bodies and take responsibility for our own health.
Well, yeah, for anyone who is, that's a whole nother topic I would love to just chat about, like fear. But even if there was no virus, it's not, I think, like, that's part of the reason you were talking about people needing not just, testing, but you need to get yourself, I don't know how to describe it, but like right in your body and your spirit and your, and that changes how your body is going to respond to a virus or anything, right?
Yeah.
It comes across or it's dealing with, right? It can't heal if you are in a
so it's
state.
Well, it's really like the difference between 2 different theories of thinking. So there's the theory, and this is what our whole society is right now just stuck in, is something called the germ theory. And so it's that, that anything that comes into our body, that's what we have to kill off. But then there's another theory, which is the one that, that's what I live by, is something called the terrain theory. And it's that we need to clean up our own body's terrain. We have to have our own body have a strong immune system. And then based on that, then our body can react accordingly. And so then we can when we work on ourselves, then we can, and we take responsibility for our own health, then we can actually control how our body reacts to that infection when we come across it. So I think that's the level of information that's not getting out there, and that's why I'm so happy for people like you who are putting this information out with like things like podcasts, so we can get information out to the public so that people realize that they have control of their health, and by having control of their health, that they don't need to be fearful of anything, and they can do this for themselves, and they can do this for their children as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And thank you for the work that you do. So we talked about a lot of different stuff here, but what are a few tips if you were to, you've said a lot of tips, but what would be like the top few tips that our listeners can take away from this conversation to improve their health and the health of their families, specifically children who likely have some chronic health challenges? A lot of our listeners, a lot of them, most of them probably are dealing with some type of neurological diagnosis. And so what would be your top tips and takeaways that you would like to share with the Brain Possible community?
I think that I always go back to basics, right? So I think that having real, clean foods is going to play a huge role in how the body functions. So focusing a diet on fruits and healthy fats and clean meats and some fruits in there too can be very, very helpful and beneficial for our kids.
Probiotic, you said?
Yeah, and adding in a probiotic, a good, strong probiotic that's specifically meant for kids. And then because their gut microbiome is a little bit different than in adults. So you want ones that are, there's ones that are specifically for babies, and there's ones that are specifically for toddlers, and then there's ones that are specifically for adults. So
that's
you
not just marketing.
No, actually, if you look at it, the microbiome is actually a little bit different. Yeah. When they've done the research. Yeah. So that's not just marketing. And then, I think prioritizing sleep is really important.
Okay.
During your sleeping hours, your body does a lot of cleanup of toxic loads, especially cleaning up the brain. So we want to make sure that we prioritize sleep. We want to do this especially for our kids because their systems do so much during their sleeping hours. Like they're growing, they're detoxing, their body is like learning, right? And that's when your body puts like memories into learned space. And so we want to make sure that we are prioritizing sleep. And I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but I think that's an important thing for really all of us to be doing, but especially with kids.
Okay.
And then my other one would be movement, that we all need to be moving. Our bodies are not designed for a sedentary lifestyle. Our bodies are meant to move. And we see this naturally in our kids, right? The kids will, just put them outside and they will run around, they will jump, they will, roll around, they will, they will be active. And that's what we need to be encouraging for our kids. We need to be encouraging them to be active, not just in structured play, but in any kind of play. And I think that's an important part of what we need to be promoting is let's get outside, let's do some movement, and let's play. So those are some tips. Yeah.
I think those are excellent. So I do want to let you go, but also have one more question about sleep, though, because you just talked about that. So how would you suggest someone is prioritizing sleep? Because then people might think, well, yeah, they sleep every day. So what's wrong with my sleep? What could be wrong, or something to look for that isn't right with your sleep?
Yeah. So, first of all, you want to do, especially with kids, they need to be getting enough sleep. And I think that there's charts that tell you exactly how much sleep kids should be getting at certain ages. And I think that, like a lot of kids aren't getting even just the quantity of sleep that they need. So that's where you set certain bedtimes. If you know what time they need to wake up in the morning, then figure out what that bedtime needs to be and staying strong with that, which I know sometimes can be challenging. Mm-hmm. But so you have your bedtime routines to try to try to calm their systems down. Mm-hmm. But you want to do things like good sleep hygiene. So it's, turning off electronics about an hour before that bedtime. And you want to be sleeping in a dark room so that there's no light coming in, sort of like they're sleeping in a cave. You want that temperature to be just slightly below room temperature. So it's a little bit cooler in those rooms. Those are just some sleep hygiene to make sure. But some of those questions that we'll ask are, are you waking up in the night? Are you sleeping solid throughout the night? Do you feel rested in the mornings? And even with kids, we can know that because are they waking up cranky or are they full of energy and ready to just run it around and they have full energy until they fall asleep, right? Yeah. So we can gauge that even if they can't answer those questions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I do like sleeping in a cave myself, but my children want to sleep with the lights on. What do you suggest for people who are dealing with that as well?
Yeah. So there's, so you want to be turning off lights, but sometimes what you can do is, I can't think of the company's names, but there's companies' names that will do. I think they're just like blue. They're like red or amber lights.
Oh, like those Himalayan salt lamps.
Well, you could use a Himalayan salt lamp and things like that. You can just use, or they have them as. They have them just as lights that you can have in, let's say, the bathroom, so the kids can find a bathroom, or if you're nursing, then you can put that little light into
like a red one.
The socket. Yeah, but it's red, so then it's not waking your whole system up, but you can still have enough light to be able to walk around.
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
that's a great
those are
suggestion.
Ones. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
You've kind of touched on a lot of stuff for us. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the Brain Possible community to be complete?
I think we've covered on a lot of things. I think
people have a long to-do list, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think, and don't feel overwhelmed by that to-do list, but instead think of it as understanding, hopeful, and possibility that there's lots that we can do, that there's lots of things that can help to improve your health. Not that you have to do everything, but that there's hope in terms of what is possible in terms of our health, right? I think our bodies have so much potential and that we just need to grasp onto that potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And that we have control over many different things.
Exactly. It's true.
Even if you don't, have the means to go out and hire an expensive coach or doctor that isn't paid for by insurance, or do an expensive treatment, there's many things to do at home.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping that a lot of the suggestions I've given are things that people can be doing at home, totally. Right? And not to be feel overwhelmed at all. There's a lot of things, like that's why I say it's just getting back to basics can be so helpful for us.
Yeah. Try and this isn't a word, but I was like, not demodernize ourselves a little bit, basic.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
want to go back to our ancestral ways as much as
Yeah.
we can in this modern world.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And where can listeners find out more about your work?
So the best place to find out all about me is from my website, which is advancednaturopathic.com. And in terms of social media, the place where I hang out the most is Instagram. And my handle there is Dr. Melina, Melina Roberts. So Dr. Melina Roberts is my handle on Instagram.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I've seen you're active on Instagram. You have a great account with lots of information.
Yeah, always just trying to supply people with helpful information for their health.
I think that's wonderful because it, again, gives people easy access at their homes to have someone that they can, learn from and take control of their own health, even if they can't visit you in Calgary, is it you said?
Yeah, Calgary, Canada. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate you spending it with me here.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily.
I hope that you enjoyed our conversation today and that you learned something new. Do you have a question for Dr. Roberts, or have you or your child ever visited with a naturopathic doctor? What was your experience? I would love to hear from you. Email me at emily@thebrainpossible.com. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast if that feels true for you. You may also consider visiting our website for more information on stories, therapies, and products that I think that you will love. There's a lot of interesting stuff found on our website. As always, thank you for spending your precious time with me today at The Brain Possible.